Thank you. Keep that on. So that, I don't know how many of you know that song. Raise your hand if you know it, if you've heard it. Not bad. So the right wing, not so much. The left is in the middle. But this became like Israel's national anthem since the war. And it actually was featured on one of my favorite channels on Disney Plus, Al Jazeera, where they actually analyzed this very philosophical rap song that talks about how we're going to get all of these murderers, and used it as evidence by the wise people of the South African legal divisions to blame us with genocide. So imagine the power of poetry. It's right. Ever since that became my anthem before every speaking engagement, because nothing speaks our heart than Jewish resistance, because Jewish resistance is what we're all about. And you know, I'm thinking about the time that we have, the precious time that we have this morning, and I have a custom which I developed in the course of, you know, my speaking work as a diplomat and beyond. What day is it today? Shabbat! So first of all, we say, what a great Shabbat Shalom, and we can't start without thinking about the Parsha. And when we think about the Parsha as Jews, we always take the lesson, the eternal lessons that it teaches us, and it's amazing how the lessons of our tradition accompanies us wherever we go. So in this week's Parsha, Va'era, we see Moshe and Aaron stand before Pharaoh. And I saw a beautiful outlook about this dialogue that's taking place between the Egyptian leader and the leaders of the Jews. And even though the discussion is about setting our people free, the deeper meaning of it, as some of our Mefarshim looked into it, was the battle between the self and the us. The idea that Pharaoh represents the ego of what he is capable of because the world revolves around him. Whereas Moshe and Aaron, the leaders of the Jews, they represent et haklal, the public, and come in the name of beyond the self and the ego. And I think that that is an unbelievable lesson right here and now. Because when I think about you, you are those Moshe and Aaron. You chose to take your ego and combine it with everybody else's for the benefit of the klal, for the benefit of the general Jewish public. And for that, you should be extremely proud of. And I am so thrilled that I get to spend this weekend with you. So do me a favor. Let's give you a big round of applause for being here this Shabbat. It truly means the world. So when I wanted to think about what is it that I want to share with you, they told me, you know, overview, politics, but maybe get personal. So I wanted to share with you my Genesis story as an advocate for Israel. Where did I learn my biggest lesson about Israel? So many years ago, when I started on my diplomatic path, you know, growing up in Israel, always wanted to do that. And when I went to the army, it even goes before that. So I'm playing with my friend in the 5th grade, and I'm already thinking about what is it that I'm going to do in the IDF. So my friend's father, he was a high-ranking officer, and I'll never forget how we're just playing outside. And then I come up to him as a kid and say, if I wanted to do something interesting in the IDF, what do you think I should do? He looks at me and says, what do you want from me? You're in the 5th grade. And I'm like, no, just give me an idea. So I was like, okay, so study Arabic. He brushes me off and goes away. Come high school, that's exactly what I do. I take Arabic for 4 years. I was one of 5 kids in my class that took Arabic. The other 95% went ahead to do biotechnology and engineering, and now they have $1 gazillion in San Francisco. But I'm here with you, and I love it. So having studied Arabic, I served in the intelligence corps, and later on, when I decided to take my advocacy to the next level, I tried to get into the foreign ministry. It was at a time when, you really had to go screening processes. I don't know how that worked, but somehow I infiltrated in. And when I got to the foreign ministry, they told me, Shahar, since you have, bless you and bless us all at this moment, when we have the command of Arabic, why don't we put you in the Middle Eastern Division? Because at the time, Israel had relations with Egypt and Jordan. It was prior to the Abraham Accords. And They were saying, maybe, we can put you in the Middle Eastern division. You'll have a diplomatic role at one of Israel's embassies in those countries. To which I said, Hineni, absolutely, let's do it. So for 6 months, they train me, and they tell me that my position is going to be a media attaché and spokesperson at Israel's embassy in Cairo. I'll never forget, though, when they told me that there are 2 stipulations to that role. One is you can't meet with ordinary Egyptians, like outside of the embassy, because the Egyptian intelligence doesn't like it when Israelis meet with Egyptian citizens. Okay, then what's the second stipulation? They said, well, you can't really invite anyone to the embassy because the Egyptian intelligence doesn't like citizens coming into foreign embassies. So what is it exactly that I'm going to do there? And, it was before even Skype didn't exist. So I wasn't sure what I'm going to do, but I was ready to serve Israel in whatever capacity I get. At which point, I got to see firsthand that Israel proved itself to be a beautiful bureaucracy. And I got a phone call from the appointment committee of the foreign ministry, and they're telling me, Shahar, congratulations, you're going to be Israel's deputy ambassador in Nairobi, Kenya. But you just spent 6 months training me to go to, but I'll go. If you want me to go to Nairobi, I'll go. I'll go to Nairobi. What did I know at that point about Israel's relations with Africa, with Nairobi? Zilch, nothing. But I was excited to learn. And arriving at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, what a cool name, right? You can all see the music and the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. We arrived there, and I'll never forget how the chief security of the embassy tells me, Shahar, when you get to the airport, just be careful. Don't flaunt your Israeli diplomatic status. You never know, security-wise. Be careful. You may end up in the trunk somewhere going to Dubai. So just when you come in, tell them you're with the UN, because Nairobi is a major United Nations headquarters. I'm sure you all knew that. And I get to the, taxi line, get a cab. We're driving to the city, of course. There is traffic. And the taxi driver turns to me as we stand in traffic and says, Karibu, Kenya. Welcome to Kenya. Where are you from? What do I say? You have to be very careful, right, as an Israeli, and also adhere to your security guidelines. So my answer was, Israel! I had to. I couldn't help myself. At that point, I'm like, Israel, and I'm ready. I'm ready for him to press the brakes. I'm ready for him to turn back and start a fight with me. I'm ready for him to go into and I'm ready at that point because I learned all of the talking points. I'm ready with he's gonna pull Israeli, Palestinian, peace process, terrorists, but I know everything. Now give it to me, let's go. And he looks at me and he tells me the words that change my diplomatic trajectory, that change the way I look at advocacy for Israel. He turns around and says the 2 words no Israeli expects you to use. Are you ready? Are you ready for those 2 words? He says, wow, Israel, thank you. Thank you for what? Like, I'm Israeli, I'm not used to thank yous. Thank you for, I just arrived. What's the thank you? Oh, he said, thank you because my father was one of the first trainees who came to Israel when Kenya gained its independence. And he learned there how to conserve water. And the knowledge that he came back with assisted us in going through the dry season in Kenya. And he taught me the value of gratitude and said, if you ever meet an Israeli, don't forget to say thank you for the knowledge that we gained. And I had no idea what he was talking about. And it was the beginning of an unbelievable journey. When you come to think about Israel, we're very used to thinking about Israel in the geopolitical context, right? It's like a knee-jerk reaction. 2021, food festival, right? Food truck festival in Philadelphia. The Moshava Israeli food truck is disinvited. Why? Because there was no Palestinian food truck. So they told the Israeli food truck they're not welcome because they couldn't balance out the hummus. It's like, that's how people think. And that's how sometimes we're used to thinking. But here I am, discovering the power of Israel. Light unto the nations, right in your face. When Golda Meir, yes, the same one, Helen Mirren, the movie, Golda Meir is Israel's foreign minister, not prime minister, in the 50s. Imagine Israel in the 50s, struggling for its existence, trying to get rifles and guns to protect ourselves, and yet she comes out with a vision. And she says, it's time. It's time for Israel to reach out to the newly decolonizing nations of Africa with a hands of friendship. How can we build a future for ourselves together as one young nation to another? since we face similar challenges. And she builds Mashav, Israel Center for International Cooperation. It's an incredible organization that's been working under Israel's foreign ministry, where experts go all over the world just to lend a helping hand. No political considerations, no bookkeeping, just pure passion of pioneering, and that word we all love. Where is Club Z? Good morning. I just want to be good with the year. That pioneering Zionism, that idea that we can make, and we are making the world a better place. And this story defined me, because first it taught me that I don't have to limit the way I talk about Israel to the way our adversaries talk about Israel. We can choose our own talking points. We can be present in our own arenas. They will not tell us what to say, where to say, and how to say. We will have that element of control. And the second thing is, I celebrated my ignorance. I had no idea. I learned something new. And since that day, it's every day that I insist on learning something new. If there was something I did not know, I cherish it, and I move on to the next day when I can learn something new about my people, about my country. I mean, what are the odds? And when you think about me, growing up in Israel, studying to be a diplomat, who had very little knowledge of that incredible part of Israeli history, what can I say about the general public? How can we come and complain to people? We need to understand that level of ignorance that exists, which needs to be celebrated and used. And that leads me to another important point, which is, again, you. When we do our Israel education, we can talk about facts all day long. You know, the San Remo agreement, and the blue line, and the green line, and the red line, and all of those facts. And you know that the attention span is about, what, 1.7 seconds. But at the end of the day, it's not that F, the facts, but it's the other F that's present in this room, and that's the faith, the knowledge that we are standing by something worthy, something moral, something true, the understanding that it doesn't matter what fact they throw in our direction, we will know how to handle it, because in our very core, we know and we recognize the benevolence of Israel. And that is key to be able to carry the light of Israel. Did you know? Thank you. When somebody comes up to you on the quad or elsewhere and says, "How dare you? Are you Jewish?" "Yes, I am." "Shame on you." "Oh, why?" "Because of the bagel and lox." "Not my fault." No. "Shame on you because I don't know if you heard, but just this morning an IDF soldier shot 3 pregnant Palestinian women at a checkpoint while they were giving birth." So how would you respond, right? It's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Were they twins? I don't know. But they will throw out all sorts of lies in your direction, at which point you can say, "I have no idea what you're talking about." Knowing Israel, that's not the Israel that I know. Do you have a source? That is the faith, the backbone that you have right here at Club Z, that's so manifest in who you are. And you know, being with so many of you, experience it individually in my conversations with you, and seeing your unbelievable staff members whom I've had the pleasure of encountering over the years and from whom I've learned so much, who are incredible, says a lot about what's happening over this weekend. And I want you to truly cherish it, because sometimes we live life at such a pace when we just zoom through it. But take a moment to truly appreciate and be present in this moment, in this precious moment that sheds light not just on the people around you, but on who you are and what it is that you stand for as proud Jews, as proud Zionists. You know, that's another word right there. Another word that's been vilified, that's been taken away from us. The people who use the word Zionism as if it's an insult, a derogatory term, a curse. Be proud Zionists. Show them what Zionism is. Reclaim that part of our tradition. Be the Club Z that you're meant to be, because your advocacy is needed more than ever before. The Israeli Foreign Ministry is but a few hundred people. You, my friends, are the real, authentic ambassadors. How many times did I encounter difficulties to enter places because I was a diplomat, and we don't allow diplomats to come and indoctrinate our students? But you have the power of authenticity. You are embedded within your communities. You have the power to carry that light. Use that power. Use that power to show exactly what we stand for as a people, so that they don't own our narrative. We will tell our story, going back to those principles, but I can share more later on in the workshop. And thinking about Mashav, by the way, I thought the movie Golda, a great opportunity. Love Golda, my favorite ever. But such a missed opportunity not to tell that part of her history. That part of a woman icon who, at a time when it wasn't fashionable to talk about girl power, she never received any kind of international award for the incredible achievement that she did. But her achievement, listen to this, her achievement resonated in the life of a young, at the time, Israeli diplomat years ago. Her work still echoed through the generations. How impactful is that? Can we play that video, please? I wanted to take a moment, and October 7th has redefined our lives. And I wanted to share Gadi's story. Because first of all, I want to tell you that hostages, numbers, killed, maimed, so much more than a number. People, faces, stories. Gadi, who's almost 80, is one of the prominent Mashav experts that Israel has sent all over the world. Gadi dedicated his life to sharing his knowledge of agronomy and agriculture in Asia, in South America, in Africa, making the world a better place. Gadi was abducted by those creatures of the dark and taken away almost 100 days ago. And nothing to me juxtaposes good versus evil more than the realization that that example of benevolence, of humanity, of Israel, of Zionism, is at the hands of those evil forces that seek nothing but death and destruction. So I ask of you, on behalf of Gadi's family, when you think about the hostages, when we use the word bring them home, think about who's them. Have a face, have a story. Think of October 7th, not in terms of, the big words that people use. We say, he who saves a soul saves the world entire. We witness, he who loses a soul loses the world entire. And every name that we see, we think to ourselves, what have we negated from the world? Every soldier that is killed in action, every citizen that was butchered and killed, what was the world denied by taking away that neshama from all of us? And this is where I want to take a few moments and maybe share with you the perspective of October 7th on a more personal level. Because we always, we discuss the general themes of what happened, but I want to take you through the journey through my eyes. When in 1993, the Declaration of Principles on that Monday morning is signed on the White House lawn, I was about to join the IDF. And I'll never forget watching television. It was on the screen, like big, rectangular piece on the wall, not on my phone. And there was like in Israel 1 or 2 channels. What a choice, right? 50%, either or. And we were watching the news and thinking to ourselves, wow, we are living in the days of the Messiah. The world is changing. You know what is the ultimate Israeli aspiration? May my child never need to go to the army the way I do. And that was our thoughts. And tears were literally rolling down our cheeks as we were looking at history being made, thinking that the world has changed a trajectory. Finally, we're on the same page of humanity, of peace, that something will happen. Truly, a great hope was in presence throughout the streets of Israel. And only a few months later did we wake up to realize that reality has changed. And a few months later, bus number 5 in the heart of Tel Aviv, Dizengoff Street, was taken out by a Hamas suicide bomber. Yes, the same organization that excels in the butchering of Jews and has taken us from the level of killing 10, 20, 30 Israelis at a time through attacks on coffee shops and shopping malls and buses to the mass murder that they perpetrated only a few months ago. The same organization, the same hatred, and the same tears that were rolling down my cheeks at that moment were now in pain for the loss of the innocent Israelis who were butchered on the streets of Israel on a daily, weekly basis. It was a time when we were listening to the ambulance cries and not thinking about a patient who is in need of help, immediately analyzing in the back of our minds, there must have been a bombing attack. When the radio took a different turn, because we knew that once certain songs were on, then an attack happened. We just need to give it a few minutes and listen to the news, and we were right. It was a very confusing time, a very turbulent time, when a car rammed into a bus stop, killing 8 people. And you think to yourself, was that a car accident or a terrorist attack? But what's the difference? People died. Same people died, same factual reality. And yet it made a world of a difference in our psyche. And when you think about the Israeli psyche, I want to mention one girl, Helena Rapp. She was 15 in the city of Bat Yam. And it was then in 1992 that she was knifed down by a Palestinian terrorist who killed her. He killed that young girl, and it was around Purim. And I'll never forget how the Israeli government at the time, the Shamir government, was toppled because Israelis didn't feel safe, because one person died. Two years later, Hamas teaches us that it doesn't have to be one, it can be dozens. And we have seen that trend growing and growing from the mid-90s, when all of it becomes very personal. It's not just a topic you read about at the headlines. One of my best friends, Itai Dinar, joined the army the same time I did. And I was serving in intelligence. And I'll never forget that afternoon when we were scurrying around knowing that something is about to take place. We didn't know where, but we knew something is about to happen. And we were besides ourselves thinking, how can we stop it? Can we identify where the suicide bomber is so that nothing happens? And then at 4:30 p.m., we get the news that the car bomb attached itself to a bus, an Egged bus, making its way in the southern parts of Israel. So many soldiers were on that bus. So many died on that bus. One of those who died was my classmate, Itai Dinar, Zichrono Livracha. And this is when this battle that we wage against terror and inhumanity and evil is a very personal battle. It's a battle that belongs to each and every one of us. And that has been our reality and has continuously grown ever since, into the beginning of the 2000s, when Israel offers the Palestinians a deal. Went to 2008, we go through the second intifada, and we keep on understanding that maybe things are not going the right way. Maybe we should change our outlook. And that is one of the big changes that I want you to pay very close attention to as advocates for Israel within Israeli society. We have shifted course on October 7th. For October 7th is a huge change of reality. It's not another struggle between Israelis and Palestinians. It's not another Israeli-Arab issue. October 6th shall be no more, because the line that was drawn in the sand on that red dawn was marked in the blood of innocent Israelis who were butchered, maimed, tortured, raped, killed cruelly, unfathomably. Every time I stop for a minute just to think about what happened on that morning, just to think about the last few hours. And that signifies a huge change, because if before that we had hopes that there might be a way to defeat terror and maybe live side by side with the Palestinians, now we rethink the whole thing. Is it even possible when 82% of Palestinians support what happened on October 7th? Is it time for us to wake up and reimagine our future and rechart our path? And these are the discussions that's going to be from now on, but the change has already happened within Israeli society. And the impact of October 7th is that the vile, filthy terrorist organization Hamas shot the notion of a two-state solution in the head, proving to Israelis that it cannot be, at least not in the foreseeable future. You know, I and so many other Israelis of my generation feel so guilty. How many times did we point out to the issue of incitement, of Palestinian education? We knew what they were saying. The Jews are the sons of monkeys and pigs, they said. They deserve to die. And I asked myself, how many times did I echo that talking point? How many times did I repeat the late Golda Meir saying of, if the Arabs lay down their weapon, there will be peace, but if the Jews do so, there will be massacre. And how come I didn't realize the true meaning of my words? What massacre really means? Because when they say massacre, they mean it. And if there is one lesson I learned from October 7th, and so many Israelis did, is believe them when they tell you who they are. Believe them. We have been victims of our own humanity, of our own perception that we see so prevalent in outside society, that they are like us. That if we desire peace, they want peace. If we just want to put food on the table, that's what they want to do. They want a viable economy in their own territory. They want to be able to govern themselves. And we were so wrong, because we are on a whole different changed perception. We live on two different planes. Because when you try to think about how effective the massacre of October 7th was for Palestinian statehood, for Palestinian sovereignty, I go back to 2005, when Israel evacuated, withdrew, retreated from the Gaza Strip. Think about that for a minute. Thousands of Israelis are being taken out of their homes for decades. The dead are being dug out of their graves. The huge businesses of the greenhouses that was operating in the Gaza Strip was purchased by American Jewish money, so that they're able to keep it as an ongoing business and export flowers and strawberries. And in a matter of weeks, the place is pillaged. The structures that were used for synagogues are being burned, and those same greenhouses to support the Palestinians there were burnt down, torched, and looted. The Palestinians received a chance to show that they're capable of sovereignty, that they're able to govern themselves, and they failed miserably. And we must not shy away from saying it out loud, calling reality for what it is, naming evil for what it is. We have shied for too long from saying this. We have provided context, used politically correct language and diplomatic words. October 7th teaches us that we can do so no more. And we owe it. And we owe it not just for the States of Israel diplomacy or the Jewish people. We owe it to those children. And that girl, and that woman in the black dress, and the hours that she went through, and the torture that she went through, and the horrible crimes committed against her while she was alive and against her after she died. We owe it to them. We owe it to her. Like I say, everything is very, very personal. It's not just a number. It's not just a topic. October 7th marked a significant change in the way we within Israeli society think about our future. When President Herzog showed at a press conference, a clip you all should use, Mein Kampf in Arabic, highlighted from a classroom. So when they come in and treat Jews with such inhumanity, are we surprised? Can we allow ourselves to be surprised? No. I'll tell you what Israelis of my generation think. We're guilty. We're guilty for not calling it out. We are to blame. We bear that responsibility on our shoulders. I was a diplomat for so many years. I cried out against all of these crimes. What have I done wrong? I didn't cry out loud enough. I didn't stress it enough. I wasn't serious enough about this. We carry the blame for the massacre of innocent Jews on that day, and we have to change path to correct it. We owe it to them. We owe it to our children. We owe that change very deeply to who we are, to securing our future as Israel and as a Jewish people, to be able to call evil by its name. Because if we look evil in the eye and we can't even name it, then we've lost the battle. Jews have always been the canary in the mine, the voice of morality and humanity, reminding the world of what the great light is that exists, that is reachable. And the truth is that this is why there is so much darkness that surrounds us, because nothing attests more to us being the light than the anger that rises within the dark forces when they see us act, speak, stand up for who we are. One word that has completely lost meaning to me is the attempt to describe October 7th in terms of context. Let me explain. If you are at that point where you need to explain to me the reason and the context behind putting a Jewish baby in the oven, then something is terribly wrong. This is the time, my friends, to take names, to take names on that yes-no clear-cut question of morality, of where do you stand, by civilization or by barbarism. Oh, wait, let me think. No, it's a yes-no question. Are you with us or are you against us? Are you with the world or are you against the world? And we must demand that moral clarity all around us. You know, we as a Jewish community have spent so much time building relationships and friends through interfaith and outreach. Now is the time to make that phone call and say, will you stand by my side to condemn unequivocally the evil of Hamas, or will you shy away? And if you shy away, you are not my friend. What countries were there to support Israel? I was touched to my core when Germany announced yesterday that it would join Israel at The Hague to present the case for Israel. I want to tell you, on behalf of the people of Israel, I want to tell you that nothing touches us more deeply than that show of humanity and support, that hand that is placed on our shoulder in times of great pain and strife for us all. When we see attacks coming at us from all directions, from some political leaders to social media to the media, we feel besieged but stronger than ever before. We tear with pain, but our pain is fire, fire of change, fire of difference. Israeli society is going through that incredible change. And what you see happening in Israel is that reborn realization, realignment of the forces out there in the geopolitical sphere, and the building of a new future, a new world. For if we know Israel, we know this: out of destruction, there will come great creation. Israel and the Jewish people have always built upon their ability to reinvent ourselves after these horrendous tragedies. And even though we experience this most painful, unfathomable tragedy, that we will carry the pain for the rest of our lives, we will become stronger, better. If you look at Israeli society of before October 7th, you have seen the strife of the last few years, the difficulties, the implosion, the problem we experienced within. And right after October 7th, and now comes the second change, there has been a re-emergence of Israeliness, a sense of unity when Haredi were rushing to the army bases and joined the army in whichever capacity they could. Some of them went ahead to fight and donned uniform. Others joined Zaka. The process, the painful process of identifying the victims. Israeli society is more unified than ever before. The judicial overhaul that's been such a topic of so many of my conversations in the last few years has been cast aside. Even recently, a few weeks ago, the Supreme Court issues a ruling, and guess what? Aside from some politicians and some professional machers within the political realms, the Israeli public was unwavering. They looked at this and says, we're too busy at the moment. We have some rats we need to catch. And very much focused on what's happening against Hamas in the Gaza Strip and against the front in the north. We are more unified than ever before. And that aspect of Israeliness is one of the most hopeful, inspirational, beautiful elements of resilience I have ever seen. I want to share with you that a few weeks ago, I visited Kibbutz Be'eri. Walking through the lanes, you know, the first thing you have to do when you go there is get used to the noise. And I'm not talking about TikTok videos on the bus. I'm talking about the cannons right next to you, bombarding Hamas outposts, our cannons in the Gaza Strip. And as I was walking through the lanes of that beautifully serene, tranquil, unbelievable kibbutz lawn, and you juxtapose it to what happened there only a few months ago, you understand the horrors. And I met a young girl. Her name is Hadar. She's 13. Hi, Hadar, how are you? Oh, I'm great. I'm alive. I'm alive. She smiled and walked away. Afterwards, the guy who accompanied me told me her story. Hadar was in the safe room with her mother, her father, and her 15-year-old brother, Carmel. And as the attack started, the monster started firing at them. Quite at the beginning, her mother was shot to death in front of her eyes because the bullets came through the door of the safe room and killed her. As they were fighting for their lives, trying to keep themselves safe, she was managing the WhatsApp, trying to reach out to somebody, listening to the terrible cries of pain from her neighbors, but also trying to let the IDF know where we are. And then another bullet hits her 15-year-old brother in the shoulder, and he bleeds to death in front of her eyes. And he gives back his soul to the Almighty at 8 p.m. that night. And at some point during the day, the monsters threw in a grenade into the safe room. And her father was severely injured. And she was hit with 3 bullets. And that girl meets me on the lawn and says, I'm happy to be alive. And I'm sitting there at Kibbutz Be'eri in the dining room. And I see somebody comes in on a wheelchair. And he's all smiley and says, come on, guys, we have to grab lunch, but we can't waste too much time because the avocados and mangoes are in peak season. We have to go and pick them. And that was Avida, her father, who was managing the production of the kibbutz. Have you seen such resilience anywhere? Have you seen such power of life anywhere in spite of so much pain? Never on the global stage. The Jewish people's resilience is unbelievable. And if you focus on those moments of pain, but the lights that comes out of it, the stories of heroism, of the people who were rushing into the fire, when you look into the files of those monsters who've spent billions of dollars from your taxpayer money, not yours, but maybe mom and dad, into the funneling the tunnels in Gaza instead of making a future for themselves, creating this city of great, great evil and understanding what they could have done with it. And yet, their plans, their diabolical plans, were to reach deep into Israel. 3,000 of them coming into Israel on that morning, heavily armed, coming into fighting, killing, maiming anywhere they could. They're planning to reach Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Kiryat Gat, Ashkelon, and beyond. And how were they stopped? By the bravery of innocent Israelis, for the system did not function, but it was ordinary Israelis who rose to the occasion. My friend Shahar Peled, who heard about this while vacationing with his fiancée up north, getting ready for the wedding on October 7th, immediately putting on the uniform at 7:30 a.m. and driving down to his unit, trying to find his way to fight for Israel. The police officer who was rushing to defend the 50, who immediately positioned themselves on major intersections to make sure that they can't penetrate into Israel, who gave their lives. Stories of unbelievable heroism. The Bedouin family, Al-Karnawi, who needed to get their son Hisham out of the party area, but when they noticed so many youngsters trying to escape, they didn't give up and started driving back and forth until they saved over 120 people. That's Israeli, that's not Jewish, that's Israeli, that's humanity. Bedouins, Druze, Christians, who are fighting among the IDF forces right now in Gaza. These are untold stories of heroism and hope that should instill that value within us, that we should look at that destruction, and even though we experience so much pain, be inspired by it. We need to be inspired by the stories of Ben Zusman, Zichrono Livracha, 22-year-old IDF soldier who was killed in Gaza on December 3rd. And before going into Gaza, the IDF soldier, they leave a note for the family. It could be a voicemail, it could be a written note, it could be anything they desire. I urge you to take a moment and Google Ben Zusman's letter, as he wrote to his family, that if you are reading this, then something must have happened. And I want you to realize, he says, that is the happiest moment for me of all, for I fulfilled my mission of standing up for my country and for my family and for my people. I have put guards on the walls of Jerusalem, and now I have fallen as one. I ask that you do not weep or cry, but celebrate and make sure to put as much meat as possible, because you know I love it. And I promise you this, when I go up there and meet with Grandpa, I'm going to talk politics to him the way he always used to love speaking to me about. Thank you, I'll finish quickly. These are the kind of heroes we're talking about. So when you hear that term of Hutar Lepirsum, it was just released, and you find out the soul that we lost, the incredible hero of Israel who put down their lives on a daily basis with great sense of unity, achdut, that we've never experienced before the way we do now, it gives me great hope. It gives me great hope of the kind of people that we have. So the first cycle of change was within Israel and the trajectory of the Middle East peace and the idea of how we move forward. The second cycle of change was the internal Israeli societal circle of the way we see ourselves and how we're going to rebuild out of this destruction. But there has been a third circle of change. And that circle of change after October 7th is relevant for us all. And that immediately connects to the starry presentation we had last night from Adela Kochav. And that is the side of advocacy, of making our voices heard, of creating a new age of accountability. For now, we will no longer look away when you are uttering nonsensical, horrendous, anti-Semitic statements, and you can get away with it. When the NYU law student, the president of the Students' Law Association there at the school, made the announcement of solidarity with the Palestinians on what, October 9th? In the whatever newsletter that they had, and suddenly she was surprised that she lost her job. Ooh, how terrible is that? Words actually have consequences. When she lost her position as the leader of the students, when donors came forth and said, you know what, not in my name. My money, not with you if this is how you behave. And then again, we find out that the rot of anti-Semitism is not standing on its own, but it's an exposition of a deeper, profound rot within the system. We find out that there has been a complete takeover of some of these institutions by values that not only contradict who we are, that undermine our values as a Western free society, forces that are abusing the words that we have created for a better world to cover for the dark forces trying to undermine the moral and political foundations of our society. And who will stand on the gate? Who will be that guardian on the wall? You are. You, Club Z, the ambassadors of humanity, the people who can make that difference on college campus and in your schools. Yesterday there was a publication of a map funded by Qatar in a public school, was it in Brooklyn, where they erased Israel off the map. They do it quietly, surreptitiously, maliciously, and in a crawling process over years to try and indoctrinate people. And who is going to be the one standing at the gate to prevent this? Who is going to be the one that's going to rise and tear that map off the wall? Who's going to be the one driving down Santa Monica Boulevard, seeing the anti-Israel posters, parking on the side, paying the meter not to get a ticket, and taking out all of these posters? You are. Because it's the end of the era of words and the beginning of the era of deeds. It is time that we take those principles of accountability and implement them in the principles of Israel's foreign policy and global foreign policy. You've heard of UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, the only agency that's supposed to take care of Palestinian refugees, but actually perpetuates the conflict, educates for incitement and hatred, and is being funded, guess what, by you, so that they can continuously do that. The same people who's one of their teachers actually kept a 12-year-old Israeli boy, Eitan Yahalomi, in the attic for 16 days in the dark. That is a teacher who is paid by UNRWA, a teacher. And Eitan Yahalomi, and again I mention a name because it's so important not to look at this as 136, but remember the people, the name, the faces, the stories, the lives. I heard his mother talk about him way at the beginning before he was released. And this one story she said about him, she said, Eitan doesn't like sleepovers. He loves to sleep at home. And I could not stop thinking about Eitan, who loves his family, who loves his home, and who has to spend his time in the dark, in captivity by these monsters that forced him to watch the horror videos that they filmed on that terrible day. These monsters that when they saw him cry or shed a tear, they jabbed the barrel of the gun, telling him that he'd better stop crying and keep on watching or else, including some of the other children that they exposed to this. These are the evil monstrosities that have to pay, that we cannot allow UNRWA to continue functioning on the global stage if not only it doesn't do its job, it undermines the very vocation it's supposed to fulfill. It's funded so that the conflict can be perpetuated, so that weaponry can be infiltrated into Gaza using their bags. It's using the kind of tutorials that are taught in those schools in Gaza that depict the Jews as nothing more than, again, those sons of monkeys and pigs that you are obliged to treat the way you did, to disrespect in life and death, to torture and maim and kill and feel nothing about this because we're not really human beings. That cannot be allowed anymore. That must not be allowed anymore. It's our time to defund those agencies that don't do their job. Hey, if I'm a barista at Starbucks and I don't do my job, do I get to keep it? No. Somebody's going to come to me and complain, so how come when it's the United Nations, I get to do it uninterruptedly? And just continue fulfilling and fueling that mission of hatred and get a free pass. Unacceptable. Big change internally in the trajectory of Israel. Big change in Israeli society. and creating a new age of accountability for Israel and the Jewish people, and our ability to take charge of our fate and not settle for just words the way I did only a few years ago, making those statements, but demand action, demand change, and we're already seeing it happening. We will be able to take back the narrative, control the story, and change reality. Not only do we have to do this for ourselves, but it's a must for our continuity, for future generations, and for humanity as a whole. For these forces are threatening not just Israel and the Jews, because what we know is that believe them when they tell you who they are, and what starts with the Jews never ends with the Jews. And what starts with the Jewish state never ends with the Jewish state. What we've seen Hamas doing in Israel in the mid-90s echoed in New York, Madrid, London, Berlin, Paris. We've seen those suicide bombers. Make no mistake, they're in it for the small Satan and the big Satan. So allow me to conclude by saying this. You are, my friends, the change makers. You make the difference. You have the ability to carry Zionism and use it with faith and facts. I am proud to be part of a group that sees themselves as part of a greater good, that combines their goals with ones of a nation and a country worthy standing by and living for. The country that is indeed a light unto the nations and will continue to be for all eternities because of our passion. Keep it up, and thank you so much for bearing with me this morning.
Thank you so much, Shahar. Can we get another round of applause for him?
Oh.
I lied. Just kidding.
We'll be back. See you later. See you soon.
I love you, Shahar.
I am a true Israeli. I occupy the stage. Nobody? Okay, so we have time for Q&A, and I'd love to listen to what you have to say. If anybody has a question, anybody wants to share. And remember, I'm an Israeli diplomat. I'm not used to people being nice to me, so feel free.
For those who would like to have a question, there are 2 mics in the hall. Please step up, introduce yourself, and ask your question.
Yeah.
Hi, Shahar. I'm Hannah from Brooklyn, New York. Okay, so I just wanted to ask you, how important do you believe social media is in this day and age for teens across the nation, especially Zionist teens? And because of your diplomatic experience, do you believe that there's a most effective way for us to post so that our advocacy doesn't just become a trend or white noise? So, yeah.
Happy to. Okay, so let me tell you this. On 2 levels. The first level is what really matters is what's happening on the ground. So, with all due respect, sometimes we look at the PR, we get upset, we get despaired. Our focus is reality. So sometimes we know that we are outnumbered, right? You have so many more billions of idiots than you have of us. So it's difficult sometimes to fight the noise. However, social media is part of our greater obligation to speak up. It's part of the process of making sure that our voices are heard. And I want to share with you something, an experience that I had with a few thousand teens when I was speaking at a church in Tennessee. And at that school, when those kids, not Jewish, heard about what's happening in Israel, they cared so much, but they didn't know much about the facts. But they came up to me afterwards and said, you know what, you inspired us to do something. I said, okay, what are you going to do? They said, we'll create a diplomatic Iron Dome for Israel. We'll get together a group of 120 kids. You help us with the messaging because we don't have access to the information, and then we choose a certain message, and we come together 3 times a week at a certain hour, and we post exactly the same message at exactly the same cause. For instance, let's take the media, for instance. Let's use a paper that sometimes carries not the best of Israel news, right? New York Times. So let's say the New York Times publishes, an irregular anti-Israel piece. What we do sometimes is we repost it, we share it, right? But the algorithm, I love that word, algorithm. The algorithm, once we reshare it, it doesn't care about no. We're resharing the bad things. However, if we target the journalist, the editorial board, the person, and then we target that message at them, we will make a difference. People will pay attention. So I urge you to not be shy and express yourselves out there on social media, by the way. Social media, in an ordinary cab. I was taking a taxi the other day, I was in Vegas, and I'm driving to the airport, and it's like traffic, and the guy turns back and looks at me, and, I tell him I'm from Israel, and then he says something like, oh, I hope you and Israelis and Palestinians finally get along. And he wasn't nasty, right? He wasn't anti, but he started with me. I'm waiting for you Israelis and Palestinians to get along. I made the decision that he's going to hear a lecture now about Israelis and Palestinians. That equivocation is unacceptable. By the time we were done with it, he couldn't wait to get rid of me. But by the time we were done, he was singing Hava Nagila with me at the airport. So that's what I'm saying. Advocacy extends to as far as you do. So don't be shy to express yourself, to initiate, to do social media and beyond, bringing people together, speaking about this, creating clubs. There are different ways of advocating, and I'm happy to dive into it later on when I have the more intimate session, but absolutely, please do, and the more the merrier. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nate. I was wondering how you learned to be such a good speaker, how you learned to get your voice across the room. I just really admire you for how you were speaking.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, let me tell you this. I'm a very shy person. And public speaking is not really my forte. But experience has taught me a lot. And when you're being asked, all the time to stand up and do this, you learn from every interaction you have. And if you're being careful and respectful for every opportunity, when you don't have a spiel, when you speak from the soul, passionately, authentically, usually people get the message. They need to feel you before they hear you. They need to get a sense of who you are. And I'll tell you one of the greatest lessons I received from my mentor, who once told me that the biggest test you can face would be the LaGuardia CNN test. Do you know what that is? So the LaGuardia CNN test is when you are filmed and people see you, but they don't hear what you say. They just see you speak. What's the emotion that that's going to evoke in them? That is your ultimate test. Watch yourself on mute. And what do you look like? What does your body language say? And I love that lesson. And I want to convey to each and every one of you the big gift that I received in being able to teach myself. Because I didn't start this way. It's been 1,800 years in the making. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jacob. Could you talk a little bit about your experience in Kenya?
Oh, I can write a book. Where is Joe? Sure. Okay, story. Great combination. Where I was not invited. Yeah, that's a horrible story. So my friend had a birthday. No, I'm just kidding. So the way the United Nations works. Okay, that's a big word. Works. And there are many stories I can tell about the UN's work. But I'll tell something very specific. So one of the major goals when we stand up for Israel is, like I told you before, we define the arena. We don't have to play in the other people's arena. We can express our own values. So one day, I received an invitation to come to a preliminary meeting of ambassadors on the industrial usage of mercury. Nothing that necessarily tops the international agenda for Israel, but I decided I'm going to go and make a statement for Israel. I'm going to join the meeting. The meeting was actually, the way the UN works is, you can't have 100 countries dealing with the same issue, so you have to divide it to regional groups. Which regional group was Israel part of? Who can raise a hand and tell me? Which area does Israel belong to? Yes? Which one? Middle East. Ooh, okay. Which other area? Anybody else? For $100,000 on this game of Jeopardy. Which region does Israel belong to? Yes. Which? Europe. Aspirational. Yep. Anybody else? Yep. Asia. Interesting. Yep. Mediterranean. Okay. Could be. So that, yep. Levant. Oh, somebody is getting romantic. Okay, so I'll tell you very simply that at the time, Israel belonged to none, because nobody would have us. There was such a, when you talk about ostracizing Israel, that's what we're talking about on a practical level. When Shahar, a young, at the time, diplomat, roaming the halls of the UN, and he can't go into the room because he's not part of any regional group for those discussions. However, Uncle Sam came to our help and decided that in New York will become part of, are you ready? Are you ready? WEOG, Western Europe and Others group, and we will come under Others. So if there is an invitation for WEOG, we can come, but only in New York. Because in any case, there are so many Jews in New York, so the Israelis can be part of it. But I'm in Nairobi, and I'm getting an invitation from the High Commissioner of the Netherlands, lovely, to come to that discussion on the industrial usage of mercury. And I know that they made a mistake because they probably took the list from New York, and I'm not supposed to be there, but they invited me, so I wouldn't be rude and not go, right? Like, it's just what you do. If you're invited, I don't want, getting anybody hurt. So I decided I was going to go. And we're sitting in that room, a few dozen diplomats, representatives, and just before the discussion starts, the British representative raises a hand and says, "My dear colleagues, before we embark on this most important discussion, I wish to attract your attention to the fact that there is somebody in this room who's not supposed to be here. And that is the representative of Israel. For under the proper protocols of WEOG, Israel is not part of this regional group, but only in New York. So for us to be able to move forward, I kindly ask the Israeli representative to leave." So I understand the sensitivity of the matter. It is the industrial usage of mercury. I mean, my presence there may, create significant changes of reality. But let me ask you to take 5 seconds for yourself, just between yourselves. What would you do? What do you do in that moment of Israel's struggle on the international stage takes such a personal angle, right? So personal. So what do you do? What do you do? Yeah, what do you do? Do you stay or do you go? You'd stay. Yeah, because you're saying you're here, you're not moving, it's our place, we've had it for years, it belongs to us from biblical times, that chair, okay. Anybody else? Stay or go? Yeah.
Well, I'm Israeli.
Uh-huh.
My father's always told me if there's a place where I'm not welcome, put an elbow and make a place.
So you stay. You stay. You're like, I'm not leaving. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody has a different view? So do you think I should have stayed? Oh, yep. Later. So like, okay, so the British representative tells me go, and then I go, and then I leave. And later on, I'm like issuing a statement. Okay. What? Calling him out. Okay, but he just followed protocol. He just did what needed to be done. Yep. Right there and then. And stay or leave? Stay or leave? Stay. Make a statement and stay. Yeah. It's like, I'm not going. Try to get me out. So this is what I did. I did a compromise. So I decided just staying would be perpetuating the notion of occupation. The Israeli won't leave. So I'm thinking to myself, what can I do to make an impact? I chose the path of making a statement right there and then before I left. And I rose and said, I wish to thank my British colleague for his insistence on proper etiquette and diplomacy, for truly my presence here during this most important discussion would have been hazardous to achieving the goal. However, as the State of Israel, the environment is of utmost importance to us, and I kindly asked the Ambassador of the Netherlands to provide us with all pertinent information for the upcoming summit, as we are heavily engaged in executing the kind of global diplomacy that would work for the causes inclined in the UN, the United Nations Environment Programme Charter. And I left. And by doing so, I achieved my goal. I wasn't the rude Israeli, but I made my point very well across, because what was the purpose of me going there? The purpose was to be able to show that Israel doesn't just exist in the realm of Israelis and Palestinians. You know who else helped me in this regard? Wales. Not the country, Wales. We had Wales, San Diego, Wales. I'll tell you why. There is a famous UN charter on combating not will, but whale hunting. And I found out, being an attorney, I looked at the books and I saw that, hey, Israel actually signed the treaty to combat whale hunting. And I was invited to a special session of the UN talking about whale hunting. So I'll never forget that moment when I called back Israel's foreign ministry in Jerusalem and say, hi, it's Shahar calling from Nairobi. Can I please get an official statement from the Israeli government about whale hunting? They were like, Shahar, you've gone mad. what are you doing there with the animals? And what do we have to do with whale hunting? He said, no. I saw in the books. We signed, in 1981, we signed the treaty on whale hunting. We should make, I had to work for a week to get them to give me a statement about whale hunting. But I did go. And it was so much fun, because if you know the world of whale hunting, you know that the bad guy in this world happens to be the Japanese. So I would be, in this instance, part of the lynching mob with all of the other ambassadors against the Japan, and it made me feel so good to be, once with the majority calling out evil. And the strength of that moment was great, because nobody expects you, as the Israeli ambassador, to make a statement on whale hunting. They expect you to speak about, Arab, Palestinian whales, the difference in the water, how does that work? So just think big, very big. Yep.
Last question.
No. Okay.
Sorry.
Yes,
Okay,
please.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Naomi from Charlotte.
Pleasure, Naomi.
I believe it was you last night who said you were on Al Qaeda's death list at some point.
No, I wish I were. No, I'm sure I'm on some death lists, but not to the best of my knowledge. No, it was.
Okay.
Yeah, Club Z.
Well,
Yep.
Okay. Well, I know that being a diplomat, there's lots of threats with being an
That's true.
advocate. So what advice can you give us on how to advocate for ourselves while also protecting our peace and staying safe?
Well, very, very valid question. Be smart. I'm going to talk about, effective tools for advocacy later on, but the big thing is use your head and common sense and judgment in deciding what arenas you want to be in and what not. I was once, played by Israeli security. They tried to lure me out for a meeting, and I failed because I was so eager to advocate. I didn't notice that they were ambushing me, and that taught me a great lesson of that I need to be careful and think about who I'm going to meet with, where I'm going to meet with, what places am I going to visit. It also means what your goal is in advocacy, because I can guarantee from my experience, maybe yours will be different, but if you try to bring a pro-Israel talk to the Muslim Students Union or the Students for Justice in Palestine, they're not necessarily going to sing Hava Nagila with you at the end, and they're not there to be convinced. So you need to choose your interactions well. But all in all, I can tell you that it's not just doing it safely. They ask me so many times, Shahar, you deal so much with the dark forces, right? Your life is embedded in those whole BDS, anti-Israel propaganda. But nothing makes me more happy and proud, because guess what? We get to do this when we have a strong, viable state of Israel. For thousands of years, we've yearned for one. Now we have it, and we get to be those guardians of those walls. And I do this with so much pride and happiness, just like my late grandmother used to tell me, looking at me when I was 7, sitting at the new immigrants' housing that we got from the government and saying, Shahar, always be grateful, for the Almighty God has brought you to the promised land. Never take it for granted. And I didn't even understand what she meant at that age, but I live and breathe by it today, every day. So carry that banner of light with pride, for it feeds your soul and it defines who we are on this world to lead a life of significance, value as we struggle for global humanity and light. Thank you for that question, and thank you for having me. I promise that's it, I'm going.
Guys, we finally kicked him off. No, just kidding. One more round of applause for him, please, guys. Shahar.
Thank you, Shahar.
Those were some really good questions.